Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. Thanks, sponsors, Topps Panini Upper Deck, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins and Scott Auctions, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. Our topic today with my esteemed guest, John Newman, Sports Card Nation, Hobby Quick Hits, is mortality. No one lives forever. And I'm not just talking about the COVID-19, but the fact that a lot of people in our nation have died, some more unexpectedly than others, but many deaths are unexpected. And John recently did an excellent podcast dealing with this. And I've been thinking about this for a while as I'm older, that most people don't think about this until it's too late. And so to do another episode where I can engage with John about these issues of mortality in a complicated hobby that is in fuego right now, would be time well spent. So thanks, John, for joining in. Thanks for taking the lead with, again, a lot of these podcasts out there are dealing with interesting stuff. The challenge for collectors is finding enough time to listen to all the great ones. So, John, thanks for your episode, for your other episodes in that one too. And I want to continue the discussion about that. So did you get any feedback from that episode? Because it's very recent.
Yeah, it's funny. First off, thank you for having me on to talk about that episode. It's fun. You're a little older than me, but I think I'm catching up to you, Dr. Jim, because I think you're aging better than I am. But all joking aside, yeah, it's a fairly recent episode, and I'm 14 episodes into Hobby Quick Hits, and I did one on Michael Jordan. I've done them on various other hot button topics, but this one actually surprisingly to me, I think, got the most feedback. Now on the episode, I asked for, you're like, what do you think? What did you think of this episode? And I got a lot of, I got almost double digit either emails or direct messages on my social media saying thank you for doing it. It's something I've recently thought about myself, and to hear you talk about it, I think when you think about it, whether it's you or me or anyone else, you kind of do that introspection. Should I be thinking of this? Is it morbid? Am I weird? Is it, you're kind of looking for like almost someone else to say, no, this is, it's smart, or I think about it too. You're looking for that sort of that reinforcement. And so I got, like I said, probably 7 or 8 messages like that. Hey, I do think about that, but you're the first, the podcast I heard that said kind of address it. Now I sort of feel a little bit better that I'm not sort of, like it gave them some reinforcement that it is okay to think about. It's not something we like to think about, but with the values of what these cards are, and as I've gotten older, I've lost 2 people this year, not to COVID, but to other cancer in their 40s, and I'm 47. And I'll be honest with you, I thought about it even before that, but when something like that happens, it really, really starts to come from the back of your mind to the front of your mind. And I have a 20-year-old son who's not as active in the hobby as I am, but a little bit. And it's something I have to think about, where does this stuff go, or what do I want to do with it? Do I want to get to a certain age, like, and set something ahead of time where, at 60, if I'm blessed to get to that number, then I just sell everything. And then that money goes into, my bank account to be distributed, and, whether it's spoiling myself or me and my wife or my son, or, all these things that go through your mind. And obviously with other things besides cards, you have, your investment accounts and 401k and all those things you have to think about at some point or another. But I thought I came out of it with that episode from the hobby stuff. When you have a lot of stuff of value, like I thought, it sounds morbid, but what happened if something soon here? Like what goes on? My wife, speaking from a personal point of view, my wife has no idea at all. She couldn't tell you, the difference between a Ken Griffey Jr. card and a Jose Oquendo card. And my son could, but so you think about, God forbid, as they say, if something happens, what happens to all my stuff? And so that's where that episode was born from. And I almost didn't, I know I told you this off the air. I almost didn't do it. I really was kind of on the fence. I didn't want to be, I kind of initially thought it might be a Debbie Downer sort of vibe to it. But then I thought, no, this is part of life that we all have to address at some point or another. And that's why I did. And I'm glad I did, even get like that feedback I said afterwards kind of made me feel like it was something we needed to do. I'm glad I did it.
Okay. Well, I do think listeners, you ought to listen to that episode of Hobby Quick Hits. And, it's provocative. And my hope for you, John, is that you get a lot of criticism of that issue. and all from people saying, you didn't need to talk about that because I've got it covered. But my guess is that's not what you're getting. There are people thinking you don't need, if somebody says you don't need to talk about it, those are the people that need to hear it. So I looked up this because I've been thinking about this for as I'm older. If you're a man, if you're just a man, just a guy in America, and you're 58 years old, and I'm not saying anything about your health, but if you're 58 years and you're a man, the actuarial tables say that you have a 1% chance of not making it to your 59th birthday. 1 out of 100. Now, some of them already have cancer. Somebody's going to get hit by a car, and this is pre-COVID, okay? If you're 68 years old, you have a 2% chance of not making it to 69. Again, death by any cause and not restricting how healthy you are going in. If you're 73, now all of a sudden you got a 3% chance of dying, of not making it to your 74th birthday. Obviously, the numbers keep going up when you're late 70s, 80s. My parents will be 95 this year. That's great, except that nobody lives forever. And the shame is if you die, if you have not prepared your loved ones. It's not good. So, and you can't just say, hey, here's a box of cards, or here's a room full of cards, or a closet full of cards, or something like that. They wouldn't know where to begin. And more importantly, what I want to throw it over to you is, would your heirs, yours or those people you're talking about, would your heirs know who to trust? Maybe not what to do, but who to trust. Do you have some sense that your wife and son would say, Dad would have trusted these people to deal with these cards, some of which are very valuable and some of them are not worth the postage, if you're like me?
Yeah, my son, Dr. Jim, my son would, for the most part. Like I said, my wife, not a chance. I mean, I've been in the hobby 30-something years. I've been married 23, so I was already in the hobby even before I knew my wife. She knows the passion I have for it. She knows what it means to me, not even just the cards, but now even with the content creation side. She kind of lets me do my thing and is very, she's supportive, but she couldn't tell you, I asked her the other day, do you listen to any of the shows? Nope. I know you're doing good and I'm happy for you. And same thing with the cards. If I laid out a bunch of cards on my desk, and to her, they all look the same. And so I think that's another reason I probably thought about that in that episode. And even I had a recent discussion with my son. I told him I did the episode and what he thought. And, he didn't say no much. It's like when my dad talked to me about stuff like that. When you're a son, you don't really want to talk about that. You sort of kind of pivot or change the subject. And so I got that a little bit from my son. So we didn't really go into great depth, but at some point, we're gonna, whether it be around the fire pit with a cigar and just kind of, have some sort of maybe not dyed in wool plan, but some sort of direction. Like if this happens, this is, what do you want to do? Or what do I want you to do? Sort of thing, sort of be on the same page. Well, God forbid.
But that can be called a will, or an addendum to your will, something codicil that goes with your will, where you're more explicit about certain things. But that's something people don't want to do. And and not only that, it's dynamic in terms of what you had last year, what you had and what it was worth, maybe pretty different from what you have this year and what it's worth now. That one box that was not important, became more valuable.
Yeah, well, death is a topic. I don't like talking about it. I cringe, even, but you got to. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's part of life, and it's something you have to face. Like you said, having a will, having some, financial planning and end game planning is important. One of the reasons I did that episode is I listened, like you. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I never really heard anyone talk about it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I almost didn't, but I did. And it's a topic, no one, even outside the card realm, no one wants to talk about finality and what we all know to be true. And it's not an enjoyable subject, especially when it's with loved ones or friends. But it's part of life, as they say.
It's a loving thing to do to burden your those you leave behind with a mess. And they even if it's a valuable mess, it's still a mess. And they can take advantage. I've really enjoyed doing some of these tributes, and I really haven't, for people that have passed away. And I haven't made a big deal about the fact that not all of them had really, wills that had specificity that dealt with everything. There's all kinds of horror stories of people preying on widows in the hobby that I'm aware of for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
But, I'm a heart attack survivor.
Yeah.
And, there's, again, a little bit of an adage or a saying that what's worse than a heart attack? And in some people say having a stroke is worse than a heart attack because you don't die, but you're either cognitively dead or most of your body is physically dead, but you're still alive.
Yeah.
Now you can't even give instructions that are intelligible.
Yeah.
And you're just there. And so, again, a good attorney or somebody that can help you think through those contingencies that's miserable, because then it's still your stuff, but you can't, I got a box of cards that I want to go through. Well, I can't, if I'm a quadriplegic, I can't pick it up, or I can't make sense of it, or so there's, again, I don't really want to be a doomsayer, but none of these things are outside the realm of possibility, and it's a loving thing to do, even though it's a very slim chance, to write something down. Because like you said, your son, he's like every other 20-year-old. They all have selective hearing. They all have selective hearing. In fact, anybody any age has selective hearing. You have selective hearing if you're in your 50s or 40s or 60s or 70s. You don't hear it the right way. But if it's written down, you say, something happens to me. I want all my Jose Canseco's to go to Tanner Jones. Okay. The opinions that are expressed on this episode are not necessarily those of the sponsors and not necessarily my own. So, Tanner, I'm not saying you're going to get all my Jose Canseco. That would be an example of something that I could write that down. And then my wife would know, okay, if it's a Jose Canseco, it goes to Tanner Jones. And the problem is, that's not a simple matter. There's some common Canseco's that are not worth very much. And then there's another one over here, and then there's one at the bank that's better or whatever. So it's a big mess, but giving some order to it is probably a step in the right direction. And I know that's what your heart is, not to burden your wife or your son or anybody else, but to be a blessing. And
like you said, you want
but you can't predict the future.
Yeah, and you want them to be prepared. There's going to be so much other stuff that they're going to be dealing with besides the cards. You want it.
Difference in one card to another. If I were to show my wife or any non-collector 2 cards that look similar, there's on my wall back here, I can have a $5 card next to a $50 card next to a $500 card, and a non-collector is not going to know which it is. Yeah. It's a different athlete. In fact, they'll always pick the more famous person. And in reality, less of value card. Pure guy, if he's up there, it's because it's a rare card. And I have cards I have here, and then I have my most valuable cards I keep at the bank. So my wife knows that, and so she knows that don't let anybody go to the bank with any sticky fingers, because there's some really good cards there. But so at any rate, that's. Can we end this on a high note, on a positive note?
I'll tell a funny anecdote.
We're both alive.
Yeah. With my son, he knows what cards are what. He knows the values and stuff. He knows my inventory and what I got. I worry more about him bumping me off in the middle of the night and just taking possession of my stuff. So
at your will, if there's any suspicious disappearance, all bets are off. Yeah. I don't think I have to worry about that, but I just would want my stuff to get in the right hands. And even though I think I've got X number of years to go, might have more, might have less, and. I told you I went to 3 funerals in February this year before the COVID was really hit, and they were 3 guys, close friends. That one was older, but 2 were younger than me, and they just died of different things, but all were kind of disease related. But listeners, fellow collectors, we're all in this boat where nobody gets out alive, and so be prepared to give the love gift to those who are going to be still behind by giving some instructions that to give them less consternation. So, John, we're out of time. Thanks for initiating this, and appreciate your good thoughts on that. And again, listeners, and John, thanks for another enjoyable 15 minutes.
Thank you.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing all right.